guys! Welcome to my channel. My name is ReadingBear and I hope you are ready for some more stories. And today, we'll take a look at some new legal advice content. If you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comment. And now, let's dive right into the stories.
First one is titled, Neighbor's Child Has Disabilities and Won't Stop Climbing the Fence, Entering My House and Freeing My Dogs. Other civil matters. For the past 7 months, after moving into my new house with my daughter and dogs, the neighbor's child, who's 15/16 and has pretty severe Down syndrome, has increasingly been entering my property and home. At first, I just talked to the neighbors, and they were at first really sorry and vowed to monitor her more while she's in their backyard. However, after a few months, they just genuinely do not care anymore and brush it off. I've installed security cameras in the backyard and front yard purely for my own safety insurance-wise, because we do have a pool. She will climb the fence into my yard, 6 wooden privacy fence, with a ladder from their shed, and let my dogs out. I fixed her letting my dogs free, as she says, by using chains and padlocks on the 2 gates. Before this became a common occurrence, she even would let the dogs out of the house and then free them. Numerous times if my garage door is open, she will leave their backyard and just walk into my house to free my dogs. I don't know what the purpose is other than it's something she just has to do for whatever reason. When she climbs into the backyard, sometimes when I'm not even home, and she cannot get back out, she begins screaming and crying and just shuts down. Before I started chaining and locking my gates because of her releasing my dogs, her parents would just walk in and get her and leave. Now, since I've chained it, they start a huge fit about me having her locked in my backyard, and they have to climb the fence, bring the ladder over and carry her back over. Somehow, this is my fault. Now, I'm not really blaming her because she mentally doesn't know any better. She has some very severe issues, and she's damn lucky my dogs are super nice, purebred German Shepherd, an English Bulldog, and a mixed Shepherd/Bulldog. I just honestly worry about her safety in the backyard, climbing fences, and her seemingly not being watched as she needs to be. I have a pool, and if she falls in when I'm not home, she could very well drown. That's why I installed security cameras to cover my own ass if that ever happens. I truly hope it never does, but it seems her parents just put her in the backyard and that's it. I've called the local Child and Family Services Office, CPS, several times in the past 2 months to report it because I feel she is at risk with her parents' inattentiveness and their seemingly not caring attitude of her just going into people's yards, garages, houses, etc. I have a full garage of power tools, table saws, etc. that I've now had to resort to flipping the breaker off when I open the doors out of fear she may severely injure herself. I feel like I've done everything I can, talked to the parents numerous times, called Child and Family Services, installed cameras, locked my gates further. I just have no idea what to do now. I've debated calling the police when she enters, but I don't know how that will escalate. Update. I'm sad about this update for the kid. I took the majority of the given advice and called the police non-emergency number and asked for an officer to come out because I had questions about an issue I'm having and briefly explained it. Officer shows up, I invite him in and explain the whole situation. He isn't really sure what to do about it right now, so he asked for a supervisor come to his position. Supervisor shows up and I go over the whole thing again. We go upstairs to my computer where I have all the videos clipped and saved, 9 times of her entering the backyard and 4 of her entering the house through the garage. We watched each one and he gets on his cell phone and goes back to his car. A few minutes later, he comes back with 3 flash drives and asked me to copy the videos over to the drive and had me fill out a piece of paper stating what I put on the drive and then signed it. I repeated it all 3 times. About 4 to 5 minutes later, after we have been talking and he's been on and off his cell phone the entire time, 2 CPS workers show up and review the videos again and take a complete statement from me going back to the first time it happened. This took about 2 hours because they wanted it to be precise and as accurate as I remember it, and left out anything I wasn't 100% sure on. The officers and CPS workers head next door to talk to the parents. Parents apparently shut the door in their faces and said they didn't want to talk, but because of my statement and the videos of her climbing over, getting stuck, having to be carried back over the times I'm at work or gone, and just entering the house, they had probable cause to enter the home anyways. After they were inside their house for about 10-15 minutes, another cop car shows up followed by another a few minutes later. I'm in my garage, so I don't know exactly what happened inside, but after more officers showed up, the father was put in the back of a car, and the daughter was put into the CPS workers' van, and they left. The father was driven away about 10 minutes after that. Then about an hour later, the mother is also put into the back of a car, and they drive away. I talked to the initial officer that showed up and asked for a supervisor, and he tells me they found drugs, pills not in prescription bottles, not their prescriptions, and that the home was just not being taken care of inside and definitely not a safe environment for a child. Said they found drugs not secured and in areas the child had access to them. I haven't seen them since the day after the post. I feel bad for the kid being in that situation, and me being a neighbor not even knowing, and my not wanting to call the cops. I didn't think it was anything like they found. I just figured it is really tough raising a kid and add on top of that severe mental disabilities, and it's even tougher. I should have called them earlier. Once the CPS reports I was doing over the phone didn't ever do anything. Next one is titled, I followed and reported a drunk driver. Then I got a ticket for driving past curfew. Juvenile and youth law. Last week I was driving home from my friend's house when I noticed someone driving very erratically. They were swerving when there was nothing to avoid, and they couldn't stay in their lane, so I called the police and followed them. The police caught up to us after a while, and they pulled over the driver. It turns out that he was extremely drunk, and when they gave him the sobriety tests, he failed them miserably. He was arrested, and the police asked me to write a statement and give them my information. I gave one of the cops my driver's license. I'm under 18, so he could copy my address, and he said that I wasn't allowed to be driving because it was past 11. I told him that I would have been home by 11, but I noticed the drunk driver, and I didn't want someone to get hurt, so I followed them. Plus, when I called them, they asked me to keep following the man, even though it was technically past curfew. The officer said that it didn't matter even if me driving past curfew meant that World War III was prevented, that the law is the law, and that he had to give me a ticket because I broke curfew. He said he would have to give me another ticket if I drove home myself, so I called my parents, and they came and picked me up, and drove the car I was driving home. This feels so wrong. I did a good thing and I'm getting punished for it. Am I really going to have to pay this ticket, or is there some way out? I'm thinking of calling the police station and asking them to reduce the fine, but at this point I'm really anxious because I have to mail something back to the court in a few days, otherwise I'll get arrested and I don't know what to do. I'm in Pennsylvania if it matters. Update. I took the advice that I was given, and I pled not guilty. Last week I went to court, and here's what happened. I brought copies of my cell phone's call log, showing that I called 911 before curfew, as well as the same records from my carrier. I also got a copy of the drunk driver's criminal complaint with the help of the court clerk, and I printed out a copy of the justification law. The hearing started with the officer saying that I was pulled over on the side of the road, that he went to investigate why I was there, and that I voluntarily confessed to driving past curfew. He said that that was all he needed to prove in order to prove my guilt, and basically left it at that. Then it was my turn to speak. I said that while I did drive past curfew, it was because I had noticed an erratic driver, and I was following him because I thought he was going to hurt someone. I felt that if I had let the man go, that he would kill somebody, and that 911 had told me to keep following him. I gave my evidence to the judge and to the police officer, and I said that I would have been home on time if not for the drunk driver. I argued that I had a reasonable belief that the man was very drunk and that the police are accusing the driver of having 8.12 back. The judge asked the officer about the driver, and he confirmed the BAC. Finally, I brought up the justification defense. I argued that driving past curfew was a summary offense and that drunk driving was at minimum a misdemeanor and at worst a first-degree felony if he killed someone. I said that the law clearly provided a defense to my conduct because drunk driving was clearly the greater of the two evils and because I drove in an otherwise safe manner. The judge agreed and found me not guilty. He said that I had proven my defense by a preponderance of the evidence and that I had done the right thing. I'm going to get my collateral back in the mail in a few days and my record is clean. Next one is titled, Dog Ate My Neighbor's Drone. Am I Liable? Illinois. Not sure what to do. Earlier today, my neighbor came pounding on my door screaming obscenities and shouting at me. When I finally got him to stop yelling, I found out that he was flying his drone in my backyard again, and this time my dog finally managed to catch it and destroy it. He claims this was a $900 drone, and I had to pay him right then and there. I refused and closed the door in his face. A couple hours later, police showed up to retrieve the drone. It was still in my yard, but my dog completely ignored it once it stopped buzzing and asked about the situation. The said neighbor called them, stating that I refused him access to my yard to get it. That's not true, he never asked. I'm worried the neighbor will try to press charges against me for destruction of property or sue me. Will he have any legal standing if this does go to court? He has a history of flying his drone low over my yard to tease my dog. I have asked him to stop several times, which he always refuses, telling me that I don't own the air above my yard. I have called the police to complain once before. He was doing flybys over my dog and getting very close to hitting him. The police didn't say he couldn't fly it in my yard, but did ask him to stop doing so in order to avoid conflict. That only seemed to egg him on. Update. A small update to my neighbor flying his drone in my backyard and attacking my dog. I was served a summons by a sheriff's deputy. Neighbor decided to take me to small claims over his drone. My MIL is a paralegal secretary, so I was able to get a free consultation with a lawyer where she works to ask some questions about what to bring and how to prepare. He seemed genuinely amused that my neighbor was even trying to sue. He also suggested I counter-sue and how I could possibly add in more damages. He also told me that my neighbor and I technically live within 5 miles of an airport, and even though it doesn't have a tower technically, that falls under FAA regulations. I called a hotline from Google and spoke to them about my neighbor's hobby of flying out of line of sight, flying several thousand feet in the air, flying near an airport, and made an inquiry into if he was registered to fly drones, saying he owned 2 very large drones. He already bought a new one. This one is almost 5 across. I don't know the weight of his, but it definitely is at least a few pounds. They took my information and have called me back once, so I know they're investigating but don't know anything else. Not sure if they'll tell me anything anyways. I brought both police reports to court, as well as several photos of my backyard, photos of our shared 8-high privacy fence, medical bills for my dog, and a few short videos I had of him doing flybys over my dog in the past. His main argument to the judge was that I'd maliciously installed a table to allow my dog to jump high enough to catch his drone, which I, somehow, trained him to do. Which, yes, I had recently bought a new picnic table, but only so I have somewhere to sit and eat outside. I argued that his flying was causing my dog anxiety, and that's what provoked it, and thanks to you all's advice, that my dog could have potentially died from ingesting part of the drone or if the drone hit him. In the end, he now has to pay me just under $2,000 for various vet bills, x-rays, dental exams, sedation, medication, etc. He is also banned from flying over my property, and I installed trail cams front and backyards just in case. He seems pretty upset with me, so I wanted to be careful. The only thing that could make this better is if the FAA finds a reason to fine him or take away his drones. Last one is titled, Wedding Photographers Are Using My Family's Property Without Permission. Arkansas here. My family has lived on a private farm for the majority of my life. However, an adjacent plot of land with an old barn on it recently changed hands, and the owners have made it into a rustic wedding venue. With that comes crowds of people and loud music on nights when there used to be nothing out in the country but quiet. But recently, the wedding photographers have been using our property for their wedding photos. They've actually been on our property taking the pictures, as well as using our property as a background. We have an amazing sunset. It and the privacy were the main reasons for living here. They've even moved things on our property without our permission, so they could have better pictures, i.e., towing a tractor out of the way. There is no public space near our property except the county road, 300 yards away, and up until now, this wedding barn was private space too. It's just that they let a lot of people on it now, and they aren't respecting any boundaries. What can my family do? Update. Apparently, the reason my folks are not pursuing this aggressively at this point is that they are in negotiations with another landowner to secure an adjacent 40 acres, at which point they will begin planting a pine plantation, effectively blocking the view from the wedding venue and providing some sound dampening. They are playing it cool with the sheriff's department right now because the venue owners are very close friends with the sheriff, and they don't believe they'll be given a fair shake unless they have a mountain of evidence, which they are compiling with written communication and trail cameras. Once the evidence is collected and the land deal is completed approximately around the end of the year, my parents will then send a C&D via their lawyer's office and go from there. Thanks to everyone for the good advice. Update. Wedding photos using my parents' property without permission. My parents have now acquired an adjoining piece of land, and we have several plans for it. Firstly, we are planting a large pine plantation between the wedding venue and their property. There will be no immediate effect, however. Over time, the trees will create a fantastic visual and sound barrier between the wedding venue and my parents' home. It will be a fantastic source of profit, as the trees can eventually be cut in sections, sold, and replanted, without losing the sight and sound barrier. This will be managed by Father and myself, and we plan on setting up a trust so that it can continue to be properly managed for my children/grandchildren in the future. Unfortunately, this also means that once the trees grow a bit, it will cut off the vaunted sunset view that has been a major selling point for the wedding venue, and also make it quite hard to trespass on my parents' property, as pine plantations in their first several years can be notoriously thick and hard to navigate. Secondly, just beyond the pine plantation, we have created a private firing range. That way we can safely enjoy our, quite loud, firearms from the convenience of my parents' backyard. The volume of fire might increase during wedding events, mainly because they seem to happen on the weekends, and that's when the fellas from the gun club will be coming over. We've also spoken with local law enforcement and firearms instructors about using our range free of charge for things such as firearms certification/qualifying and concealed carry licensing tests. Third, since we are going to be hunting the property as we have for almost 20 years now, we will be marking everything quite aggressively with posting purple and a bevy of no trespassing signs, and have contacted the local game and fish department about dealing with trespassers, as they seem to be a bit more independent than the local law enforcement and just happen to be friends with most of the gun club members as well. So all in all, patience will win the day. And there's the added bonus that if something happens to the trees, tree law. Edit. Forgot to mention the family lawyer has sent C&D letters to the property owners and several of the photographers that have been identified through social media posts that have trespassed on their land to take the pictures. They were mailed out right before the Christmas break, so they will likely be getting those today. Thanks for listening.